Welcome back. This week we're going to go with Sobota's Swimmin Jimmy. We're going to reshoot this one. I just did this one probably 2 years back, and there's some things that I want to address on this pattern, some things that I did wrong, quite frankly. And also, we've got the multi-camera setup on this one. This is the thing that I'm most excited about with the multi-cam setup, is the deer hair work. I think I'm going to be able to highlight a lot more than what I was able to with just the straight on shot. So without any further ado, we're just going to go right into this one. The one that I did was the rainbow colored. We're going to do a baby, or a, juvenile brown trout today. And get that out of the vise. And to start on this one, we're going to go with an MFC 7050 size 4. The dogs are wound up, so it may be interesting. Alright, let me make sure I'm not in a frame there. So with this one, I'm going to start. Typically, you'll see me, I'll start anywhere from the point to the barb of the hook. With this one, I'm going to start forward of my halfway point. And the reason for that is I'm just going to be Palmer and Marabou through the back section. With the Palmered Marabou, it's going to wind up lengthening out. And if you start all the way in the back, it's really going to lengthen it out. So I'm going to start at the halfway point, and by the time it's palmered, my tail's going to wind up right about here. If I went the opposite and started at the normal point, it would be all the way back here. So we're going to find some good Marabou plumes, or Marabou, plumes here. And we're going to try and do this with 2. It may take me 3. I'm going to try and do it with 2. Get that one out of the way. And this is just a straight yellow. Sometimes I'll use the sunburst with on the brown trout patterns. Most times on this Swimmin Jimmy though, I'll do just the straight yellow. So we're going to get this set in the vise. Let me find my hackle pliers here. Get this one set in, and I want to rotate this around. And I'm not worrying about the spacing. I'm just taking this as far as I can until the feather is at the tips. Bust that off, get it out of the way. Get that out of the way. And I'm going to go back about halfway from where I started the tie-in point. That way it just peels the feathers back a little bit. It gets rid of the chance of a tooth getting in there and ripping up a stem and your back half just unraveling on you altogether. Next up, we're going to take just another plume and hopefully finish this out on 2. I think I found a pretty good one there that I like. Yeah, that one's almost all usable right there. Almost completely usable. Throughout the entirety of that feather. I'm going to take this and hope that I get enough that it's going to work this right to the front. The actual feather is a little bit sparse, so I may have to throw a thicker one on here, but the nice thing on this back hook is you typically don't have to, because you're going to wind up Palmer and Marabou on the front section, so it'll cover up anything that you're lacking in the back hook. That looks pretty good right there. I'm going to get away with doing just 2 on this. You can see I've got Marabou flying just everywhere. I'm going to wet my fingers, preen this stuff back, and I'm going to go about 3 or 4 wraps back just to peel that material, just to make sure that that material stays running back for me. And now what I'm going to do is go with an accent on this. I'm going to take some brown. I'm going to rotate this vise 90 degrees. You can see here's how it typically is, how when you're tying. I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees, and I'm going to throw some brown overwings over top of this here. So I'm going to go into the brown package. If I can find a good one that's a good full piece, I'm going to be able to go with just the one. If not, I'll double it up and go with 2 plumes, but I'll wait and see what this looks like once I get it on there. This is a pretty good piece right there. Get that off to the side. Now when I put this in, I want the length to be just about the entire way back on the yellow. So right there's what I have. I just want to throw this in here, and I want to get a quick look at this. Remember, you're 90 degrees offset on this. I want to get a quick look at this before I decide if I want to throw another one on there. That's a pretty good feather right there. Be able to rotate that around. See how we have some pretty good coverage. I'm going to stick with just 1 on this because I want to progress as I go to the front and make this a little bit thicker. So I'm going to just call that good right there, and my back hook's going to be done. Get a whip finish on that. Get that out of the way. And then I'm just going to find, well, I actually don't even need to tone that thread down at all because I'm going to have all Palmered Marabou going back over top of that. You won't even see it. I'm going to find 38 thousandths wire here. Find something to cut this with. I know I have my extra, or my spare scissors sitting around there somewhere. There we go. And then before I throw that in the hook, grab my 2 beads and set this in. Kink the wire as usual. Get the beads. I'm going to go with 2 on this one. You can go with 1 if you want. 3, it doesn't really matter. Whatever you want for your distance. That's entirely up to you. So we'll get that one out of the vise. We're going to bring our front hook in. This is a Gami B10S size 1. And we're going to bend this hook. Now on this hook, you could go with an Arex TP 650. It has the 26 degree bend. I want to be a little bit more aggressive than the 26 degrees, so I'm going to grab a Leatherman here. I'm going to set that there. And then make sure that this is in the frame how I want it. I'm just going to heat this hook up. And another reason I'm going away from the Arex is I want the bend a little bit further back than what they have them. So I want to make my own bend here. Just get some good heat on that. And I'm going to go a little more aggressive on this bend. I want to probably go about 26 or 30 degrees, 35 maybe. Just a little bit more aggressive. And after I've heated it up, just take a quick bend right there. Let's take a little bit out of that. That looks pretty good. That's going to give me a lot of usable hook to work with. A lot of this fly on the front half is deer hair. It really is. The Marabou, the Palmered Marabou portion on the back just adds some bulk. It continues with what you have on the back hook, but the majority of this front is all deer hair head. So I want to make sure that I have a lot to work with there in order to make this fly do what it's supposed to in the water. So now I'm going to take and just build a thread base here so I can get my connection together. Stop just short of that bend. And then I'm going to leave my wire, or leave my thread right at the point of this hook. Grab my back hook here. Make sure that my wire's not crossed over on itself like it is right there. You can see I'm going to get that in the frame. Make sure that I get this in the frame. You can see how it's crossed right there. I want to eliminate that, bring this around, make sure that it's running parallel. That way it won't fold over on you once it's on the front hook. It won't fold over once it gets a fish or two on the back. Shorten that connection up just slightly. And then get this connection together. Finish up with the wire here. I'm just going to work this up right in front of. Let me get this out of my way there. Double this wire over. I'm stopping just short of the bend of the hook. Get that thrown in. Get rid of this extra wire. Cover up the wire that I cut, and then I'm going to whip finish this. Now I'm going to go with my gel spun 100. Cover that back up. And I'm ready to palmer in some more Marabou. Before I do that, I'm going to take, and this step right here is completely omittable if you want. If you want some extra flash in it, great. If not, go ahead and just go right to the Marabou. I'm going to go with 3 strands of copper Flashabou. This is holographic. Double it up, and then I'm going to run this down each side. Just get a couple going right there, couple down the opposite side, and we'll trim that off. I want it going about halfway back the body on the back hook. That's about the distance that I typically like for these. Now I'm going to take some more Marabou, hopefully be able to do this in 2 plumes again if I can find the right piece. That one looks pretty good. There we go. Make sure that when you're tying this in that your package side is facing up. Package side being the more shiny. If you look at the 2 sides of this, one's shiny and one's a little bit dull. Make sure that your shiny side is facing up. We'll go ahead and get this tied in, and then we're going to palmer it as far as that feather will last for us. Half hitch, get that in the cradle, and not worrying about the spacing. Once again, I'm not worried about that spacing on this. I just want one wrap right in front of the next all the way up as far as it'll go. Now the same as before, I'm going to take this and go halfway back just to protect that a little bit, and also to get the feathers falling more toward the back of the hook. They're not going to lay perfect for you. I mean, unless you really go back there, they're not going to lay perfect for you, but you're going to be adding more Marabou through this, so it's going to lay this back. And then obviously, I mean, once it's wet, it's going to do exactly what it's going to just look how it's supposed to, and it's not going to be all fluffed up like this. Now I'm going to take another piece of brown, and with this hook size combination, it's right on the border of needing to do this or not. This is just going to make this brown fit together a little bit better. It's going to make it look like a seamless transition all the way back. If you go a hook size down, you probably don't need to do this, because you'll be able to throw this in and it's going to lengthen out and give you good coverage. But I'm going to throw this one on here, and I'm just going to use that one piece. Now I'm going to go back to palmering a yellow piece of Marabou. This is another pretty good one here, so I'm hoping to be able to get this done with just this last piece. Four pieces total, and hope to be good. I want to stop right at that bend. Right at the bend is where I'm going to be tying in the collar. And I don't want to be tying a collar on that slope, because that's going to, one, cut away from the actual head that I want to tie in. It's going to cut the length down on that. And it's a little bit more difficult to tie a collar in on that slope as it is to stack material, or stack deer hair. Get this out of the way. Same thing. Just picking this material out as you progress forward, one wrap in front of the next, being mindful of where your bend is, and I'm stopping right on that bend. That looks pretty good. Stopping right on that bend. Pick out any fibers that you feel are trapped. I feel like I got one or two in there, and I'm just going to go a few wraps back. You can see I'm probably 1/8 of an inch from that bend. Still in good shape here, still have a lot of room to work with for the deer hair. Now once again, I'm going to take some brown Marabou and I'm going to lay this over. This is just going to be a toner. That looks like I may be able to get away with just one feather on this one. This is a pretty good feather here. Hopefully I can get away with it. And then I want it running right into my other brown. There we go. I'm going to throw a second one on there. I just want that brown to be a little bit more pronounced. Yeah, I'm going to throw a second one on there. Let's see what we got here. Hopefully something a little bit better than that. Well, a little bit fuller. That looks all right. Get that out of the way. Now don't set this one right on top of where you have your other one. Kind of throw it off to the side a little bit, so it's going to be a little bit canted. The length is going to be the same, but you want to give a fuller coverage across the body. Trim off your excess. I'm going to rotate this back around, and I have a nice clean area to work with for the deer hair head. finish that, get rid of it. Now I'm going to transition over to a gel spun 200. Almost any time I work with deer hair, I switch to the 200. The 100 seems like it has a tendency to cut through, especially if you're heavy-handed on the thread like I am. So I'm going to take this right back, get that out of there. Find a straw here. Get rid of all of that Marabou. That way I have a nice clean area to work with. None of this Marabou is going to be interfering with anything. And I'm going to be able to tie this in unimpeded. So now we're going to follow the same suit with the brown being on the 90-degree side. We're going to tie this deer hair in, and this is going to be our collar. Now with this, the only thing that I'm tying in is the collar, and that's it. I'm not going to try and use this excess to build part of my head. I'm just forming a collar out of this. So now if you want to, you can throw this in a stacker. It's not really necessary for this pattern because it's not really imitating a sculpin or anything, so it's not part of a balancing thing like you would see on a dungeon or a cougar. But I don't know, I like it when the collar is a little bit more even, and I don't like seeing them just all over the place. But that's my personal preference. So whatever you decide you want to do, you can go either way with it. Just going to give a quick tap with the stacker on that one, get this out of there, and then I'm going to rotate this back so I can catch my reference points. My collar I want between the point of the hook and the barb. That's about where I have it right now. I'm going to take all of this out, and I'm just going to eliminate the temptation to use that as part of the deer hair head. I'm going to line this up, try not to block the camera too much here. Line this up, and all I want to catch is maybe 1/8 of an inch, just one nice clean wrap. Second, you can see where it's starting to flare a little bit, and then I'm going to press down on this just to give that nice half moon effect. If I turn this around, you can see this section right here is nice and clean. There's nothing in my way. There's nothing going to impede me from putting the yellow portion of my collar in. So now I'm just going to go right through here. I'm going to trim this, or I'm going to make sure that I secure that in place. Now I'll go with the yellow deer hair. Find a section that I like here. Those tips are pretty well busted up, so I'm going to go to this inside. And the collar on this one is not thick like a dungeon or a cougar. It is not thick at all. It's, like I said, it's not a stabilization factor. It's not representing pectoral fins. We just have this collar on here to fill the fly out a little bit and transition from the deer hair head to the Marabou. Same thing, we're going to give that a quick tap. Stack these out nice and even. And now you already have a reference point of how long you want your collar to be. Set this down, measure it out, and then go ahead and get rid of this. Same thing as before. I've got just that 1/8 of an inch, and then I'm going to spin my thread. We're going counterclockwise. That way the thread naturally is going to go back to my hand. Get a couple of loose wraps on there, push this down, and that'll fill out the rest of the half moon that we're looking for. Now we're going to have a nice collar the entire way around our fly. give that a look, you can see the nice transition that we have right there between the two colors, and then the same thing on this side. Now this is where it's going to get a little bit tricky as far as finishing this off if you're doing a two-tone head. You want this separation, and because I'm tying on a bent hook and the brown is going to be on the top or the back 90-degree portion of this, I'm going to turn this around and we're going down the bend but away from us. It's a little bit tricky, but a little bit of practice you can get this right. One thing that I suggest is always putting a half hitch in right there. It'll save you a ton of frustration when you're moving this around. Now one thing that I do want to highlight is when you're selecting your deer hair, this is belly hair. When you're selecting this, you can see how this is nice and clean right here. It's nice and even throughout. That's the stuff that I had cut already. And in order to do that, I just work my scissors behind this. I get the amount that I want, and I peel these fibers back. And now I'll bring this close to me to where it's a little bit easier to control. With the belly hair, it's a little tougher because, you know, you got an uneven, you can see the bend in that. It's a little tough to work on a flat surface with it. But what that does, I got too busy explaining the belly hair or the shape of it. But what that does is it gives you more length for working material. The tips of this are not as hollow as what is closest to the hide. The stuff that's closest to the hide right here, it is so hollow, it will flare so easy for you. If you try and tie in close to the tips, it's not going to work out, I promise you that. And it's just going to look really sparse once it's tied in. So make sure that you're cutting as close to that hide as possible to get good working material. Now I want to clean this out, get rid of any of this excess, and once again, to eliminate the possibility or the temptation to use those tips, I'm just going to cut those out. Now I have just probably an inch long section of deer hair. I want to rotate this, and I'm going to block the camera here a little bit, but I want to find my center section. I don't have any material other than my collar that I'm worried about right now. So all I'm doing is moving that out of the way with my ring finger and my thumb. I'm going to catch this with my ring finger underneath and my thumb. Shorten that thread out just a little bit. Now go one wrap right around, and I know I'm probably blocking multiple camera angles here, but go right around. You can see this starting to flare. Two wraps, get a third, and now I'm going to pull straight down. See how it flares out? And now when I move this around, I still have a nice clean section to work with right here. I have no interference whatsoever to get my brown deer hair in that. Now I want to flare this just a little bit more. All I'm going to do is just pull down a little bit tighter on that, and we're good to go. Flares that back half out just a little bit. Now I want to take my brown and set that in, and I'm going to go over the same thread path that I used for the yellow. I'm not advancing the thread at all. I got a few pieces in there that I don't like. There we go. I had a little bit of hide in there. Now, like I was saying, I want to go just in the same spot, find my halfway point. I'm going to use the same thread path that I used for the yellow. Two, you can already see it starting to flare. And then there's a third. I'm going to hold on the yellow, pull tight, and you can see that just flare out perfectly for me. I still have separation between my two colors. Everything's pretty smooth right there, pretty clean. I want to move this back. Sometimes when you're working with this belly hair, you can wind up getting some shorter material and can make it a little bit more difficult to get this in place, or to get these shorter materials from going into your next set of stacks. Alright, that looks pretty good. Now what I'm going to do, because I only have just a little bit to work with here, I only have a little bit of hook. I got probably maybe 1/8 of an inch, maybe a little bit more. I want one more stack in here. Once I get that stack, I'm going to flip it over, I'm going to do a brown, and then we're going to be done on this. Same thing as before. I want to find something that I can work with a little bit better here. We're going to be using a little bit less deer hair on this one than we did the first, but I still want enough to where it's going to fill this out. Once again, clean it up, get rid of the tips, find your halfway point, and that's what you're going to want to tie this in with. Grab my deer hair that I've already tied in, get to where I can see this, 2, and then a 3rd. Now we're not spinning, we want this to just stack. So I have my 3 wraps set in there. Everything's pretty clean as it sits right now. Just pull tight and flare it. You can see on this side right here, we still have a relatively clean section to tie in our brown. Let's find some good brown hair here. Taking the same amount on the brown that you took from the yellow. Clean that out, trim the tips, and once again, the same thread path that you used for the yellow. Go 1, 2, start to pull a little tighter, get a 3rd in there, and then pull right towards you. And you can see how it flares that out real nice. We have a good clean head to work with now. All of our deer hairs on here. I'm just going to pull this stuff away from the eye, get a nice section to where I can tie off. I'm going to trap 1 or 2, but that's alright. I'm using the gel spun. I just pull a little tighter and they fly away. Now I'm going to get my head in the back camera so I can whip finish this. Everything's cleaned up, everything's pretty good. Before I start to trim on this one, I want to take and just fluff all this deer hair out. And ideally, I'm going to have a nice clean break between all of this. I mean, you're going to be putting an eye over top of it, so it's not imperative. And if there's some yellow that goes into the brown, that's fine. I'm not as picky on this one as I am the white girls or the D&Ds. The white girls, I get pretty picky on, you know, having colors mix into the other one. I don't know why. It doesn't matter. Like I said, cover it up with an eye anyhow. So, but something to keep me entertained, I guess. All right. So now the last thing that we're going to do on this is we're going to trim it. We've got the eye of our hook with the proper orientation sitting right here, and then the bend. Remember that this hook is bent, so don't try and cut like it's just a regular ring eye that's unbent. Just remember that that's bent. I'm going to find the center. I'm going to find the eye, and I'm just going to push my blade right through that. Now there you can see I had a little bit of travel there. It's not as clean as what it should be, so this fly will get thrown away and never fished. Not quite. They'll still eat it. Now I just want to get the overall shape on this. Just working on the overall shape. That's all I'm after right here. I'm not making this thing perfect right on my first cut or two. Go ahead and get rid of some of these more hollow hairs here that are going to interfere with the collar. Just going to trim this up. And now once I have my overall shape, that's where I'm really going to start forming this head the way that it's designed to be. You can see right here that it's pretty thick. Try and get a good look at it. There it is. You can see that's a pretty thick head. I want this thin on the top and thin on the bottom, and I'm going to start to trim into the bend a little bit to get this fly to swim how it was designed. So as I'm doing that, with the original shape that I trimmed out, I'm just going to get a little bit more aggressive, and I'm going to work right back to the collar. You can see it's really starting to take shape now. Same thing on the top. Just gonna go right around here, get the shape that I'm after. I'm gonna take these sides and I'm gonna round those off a little bit. Same thing on this one. I want to take this side and round it off slightly. Now, we're getting close on this one. I'm working on the underneath side again, and I'm going to start really getting aggressive on this and getting the shape that I want. I want this thing, this bent hook, when I pull on it, I want this thing to shoot down and flutter side to side. And to do that, you want that water coming up underneath and catching this deer hair. When it's catching that deer hair and you're pulling on it, there's tension on it, it's going to dive and flutter. So, just a few more quick trims here and we should be good to go. I'm actually going to leave that right as it sits. I'm going to put the eyes on and then we'll get that straw off and show you what we got. Before we throw on the eyes, there's one or two hairs in there that I didn't really like. I'm going to figure out where I want my eye, and I'm just going to brush this up slightly with my razor blade. That way I'm going to have a nice spot for the eye to set. Just brush that up. Sometimes on that rounded deer hair, the eye will sit off a little bit because it doesn't have a good surface area to sit on. Now we'll take this just 7mm fish skull eyes. I'm going to find my glue. Throw a touch right here and then rotate this around, a touch on the underneath side as well. I got this hair a little more compact than what I would like it. I don't really like them like a D&D or a wedged head. I would like it to be a little bit more pliable. That way some water is able to get in there and help with the sink and the swim. But I think I'll live with this one. There we go. Last things, I'm going to get my straw out of here. Just work this material around. There you can see we have the brown Marabou going right down the side, following with the same color on the deer hair. Same on the underneath side. It's a little wild right now, just because that straw was over top of it, but I'll get this Marabou around and get it cleaned up. Everything should be pretty good now. There we go. And like I was saying, as you're fishing this one, because it's bent down like this and it's candid 90 degrees, this thing swims like crazy. When you have the tension on it, it's digging down to the bottom. When you release it, it just kind of flutters up. Has a really neat swim to it, and the fish really seem to react as well. One of the more popular swim patterns out there, as far as overall action goes, I would say. You know, you got some of Andreas's patterns. The ragdolly comes to mind. That one has some really good swimming motion. And then there's a few others out there, but those two are probably, in the swim world that use deer hair heads, are probably the two most popular. And for good reason. They just flat out hunt. That's going to wrap this one up. If you guys have any questions or comments, as always, leave them with me and I'll get back to you. But thanks as always for watching, and we'll catch you next week.